On September 1st, 2024, Stephen Frayne Bailey killed 2 people and changed the lives of many others forever when he drove his car through the patio at Park Tavern in St. Louis Park. Christina Folkerts was the mother of 3 girls whom she loved immensely. She worked at her beloved Park Tavern, where she died at the scene that night. She was a passionate photographer who loved music, live concerts, and her Starbucks. Her family described her as a free spirit who found the beauty in everyone. Gabe Harvey, who was sitting on the patio with coworkers from Methodist Hospital, was pronounced dead at the Hennepin County Medical Center. Gabe was going to graduate from nursing school that December. He and his partner Denzel had recently become new homeowners. His family described Gabe as kind, smart, hilarious, and so incredibly positive. If he was not assisting staff, patients, or family members, you could find him skipping down the hallway, encouraging everyone to have a lovely day. Several other people were injured, some critically, and many more were traumatized by the completely unacceptable actions of one individual. Our thoughts are with Christina and Gabe's families, and with all others affected by this tragic incident. Today, our office has secured a guilty plea for Mr. Bailey. He has pled guilty to 2 counts of third-degree murder and 3 counts of criminal vehicular operation causing great bodily harm. Under the terms of the plea, he will be sentenced to between 25 and 30 years in prison, with the exact term to be decided at sentencing. We will be asking for 30 years. We are not always able to pursue third-degree murder charges when people cause death using their vehicle, but in this case, the facts clearly supported it. Mr. Bailey's preliminary breath test showed a blood alcohol level of 0.325, more than 4 times the legal limit. And he had 5 previous convictions between 1985 and 2015 for driving while intoxicated. While attempting to park his own car in the Park Tavern parking lot, he backed into and hit a parked car. Instead of stopping or pulling into the parking space, which was right in front of him, he accelerated at a high speed toward the patio, swerving to miss another car as he drove toward that patio. At first, I think the assumption was that the person who was responsible for this accidentally hit the accelerator instead of the brake. But the videos from the Park Tavern revealed something much, much more horrific. He accelerated past 11 parking spaces and a 2-lane drive before plowing his vehicle into a metal fence and through the patio, killing Christina and Gabe and hurting many others. He didn't slow down or stop until his vehicle hit a boulder on the other side of the patio. Mr. Bailey's choices that day scarred many lives and affected an entire community. And let me say this again, they were choices. Alcoholism is a disease. Drinking and driving is not. And trying to leave the scene when you've hit a car because you are intoxicated is a choice. Had he made different choices, Gabe and Christina would still be here with their loved ones. This was an entirely avoidable tragedy, and Mr. Bailey is being held accountable for causing it. He will be in prison for a long time to ensure that he cannot hurt anyone else. I also want to take a moment to make a broader point. There are many, many options to get where you need to go safely. There is no excuse for drinking and driving. Do not put your own life at risk. Do not put others' lives at risk. Make safe driving choices and take care of your neighbors and your communities. We have Nadia Mohammed, the mayor of St. Louis Park. I will take some questions, but I want to give you the opportunity to hear Mayor Mohammed and to ask her questions.
Thank you to both you and your office for putting this together and for all the work that you do in this case, that you have done already in this case. I will keep my remarks brief and short. First and foremost, I want to start with my sincerest condolences to the families and their friends. What has happened was a complete tragedy. What happened in St. Louis Park last September was completely preventable. Let me say that again because it's already been said. This was completely preventable had one person made a different decision. This act has left a permanent scar on our community and on an establishment with a long and treasured history in St. Louis Park. Every time I think about that day, I am still in mourning. Had one person decided against driving while drunk, two valued members of our community would still be alive. Christina and Gabe would have left Park Tavern that lovely fall day and carried on with their lives. Their friends, families, children, co-workers, and loved ones would not have been left with a hole in their hearts. Many others who have survived this incident would not have endured physical injuries and mental trauma. The police officers, firefighters, and others who have arrived at the scene to help will never forget what they have witnessed that terrible evening. While today's decision provides some comfort, it won't return Christina and Gabe to their families and friends. It won't heal the physical and mental injuries suffered by those who were there and those who responded to this incident. But if there are any positives here today, it's the hope that we can ensure what happened in St. Louis Park never happens in our state again. Legislation strengthening Minnesota's DWI, sponsored by our very own House Representative Larry Kraft and other SLP legislators, have passed the House, and that we're hoping that it will pass the Senate as well. And of course, I will be there and invite everybody in this room to be there when the governor signs it into legislation, making it harder for drunk drivers to get behind a wheel. Of course, you can help as well. It's been said a million times, and it's worth repeating again. If you drink, don't drive. Make safe choices. That is how you can honor the memory of those who were killed and injured in this tragedy and every other tragedy caused by drunk driving. Please, please ensure the safety of our community. Hold yourselves accountable, for if you don't, the law will. So thank you. And thank you again.
I will make a short comment on the letter from the DOJ, but I want to be clear that I will only be taking questions related to this particular incident and today's plea. This was a horrific tragedy, and out of respect for the victims and their families, we will not take questions on other topics. Because it's an open inquiry, we can't comment on the DOJ investigation, but we are fully confident in that our policy complies with the law. Questions on today?
Can you talk about the evolution of this plea deal, the amended complaint, and sort of the unique, I don't know if it was a challenge or not, trying to get a third-degree murder conviction through a plea deal in this case?
Yes, thank you. The question is, can I talk about the evolution of the plea negotiation and the amendment to the third-degree murder charges? You know, first I want to thank our prosecutors who are here in the back, who handled this case and handled it very well. You know, as I said earlier, I think initially, before we saw the video, the assumption was this person hit the accelerator instead of the brake. But I remember our team bringing me the video, and we all looked at it. It's very clear video from Park Tavern parking lot at different angles. And it was one of the most horrific videos I've ever seen, unfortunately. And although it can be difficult to prove third-degree murder, we did not think it would be in this particular case. Having said that, Mr. Bailey was released from jail to go to treatment. I'm sure, I won't speak for him, but I certainly know from the perspective of a person who's out of custody, looking at a lengthy prison sentence, especially when it's been amended to third-degree murder, can take a while to understand that that is going to be your consequence. So I know, as with any negotiations, there were back and forth over a period of time. But we did land in a place which is actually the sentence will be greater than what you would get for an intentional murder.
Is there a part of, court today, there was a discussion about the fact that this man has had a number of prior DWI convictions. He's gone through classes, education, all of the things that are the standard operating procedure for how the state deals with those kinds of actions. Obviously, legislation is being introduced to try to change some of those laws. But in terms of how a county prosecutor views trying to stop this kind of tragedy, does getting a plea deal at this level increase maybe the notion to members of society that there can be higher repercussions if you don't think before you strike them?
I think the issue is that people don't think before they drive drunk. And here's what I think happens. As I said, alcoholism is not a disease, but you make choices. If you know, as Mr. Bailey did, because he had 5 DWIs and he, as my understanding, he had the interlock, right? If you know, as we all know, you don't make very good decisions when you drink and drive, then plan for that. Give your car to somebody else to store. Hide your keys. I mean, there are things that you can do if you know you make poor decisions when you drink and drive. And I think, one of the hopes of having this press conference is to get the message out there to people in the community. It is a disease, addiction. But if you know you have a tendency to want to drive, then figure that out. Take a ride share, get rid of your car, but also to family members, friends, and loved ones. If you know that somebody has an addiction to alcohol and they drive, or you see that they're under the influence, make sure they don't drive, because there are plenty of options. And so, as I said, he had 5 DWIs, and I'm not sure what could have stopped him from getting into that car other than his own choices. I know that there's legislation that would keep interlocks on for longer periods of time. Ultimately, it is, I think, a lot about personal responsibility when you are in that situation, and the responsibility of the community to make sure everybody understands drinking and driving is not okay. There are many people, most people who come in here on their first DWI never come back. They're scared, they get a wake-up call, they don't come back. But there's a small percentage of people that keeps coming back, and they don't seem to get it for whatever reason. And so trying to get them to think about the tragedy that could happen and community to help with that, friends and family, I think is something that we can do. I think as technology gets better, hopefully there will be other ways of preventing people from being able to operate cars.
One more question?
Yes?
When you saw that he had 5 prior DWI convictions, what was your reaction to that?
I also understood that he lived fairly close to Park Tavern. And in really watching the video, what struck me were all of the choices he could have made. So he could have walked. He could have taken rideshare to Park Tavern. As you can clearly see him come into the parking lot, and there was a space he drove past, and then he backed up into another car. And rather than stop, pull into that space, and go into Park Tavern and say, hey, I hit somebody's car, and exchange insurance information, he knew he was in trouble because he had been drinking. And then the choice, and it was a choice, to really try to get out of there to avoid consequences. And looking at the video and seeing him accelerate into this group of people that was just minding their own business, having a good time, celebrating what they were there to celebrate. There was also, there was a child sitting at the table, a baby. And a man, you can see, sees the car coming at them and dives across the table. And you see the woman with the child, and the man was injured, I think. He can't walk very well. But you see all of these people going about their business. And just to think of all the different places he could have made different choices. And I suppose it's not a surprise that he had prior DWIs, because, as I said, people tend to come back. If you have 3 or 4, 5, 6, we see many people with DWIs. And so I wish he had made different choices. There's nothing, even though we're going to get a lengthy prison term here, it's not going to bring loved ones back or undo the tremendous injuries that happen to people. And so I hope that people will think about this, think about their friends and families who may be struggling with addiction, and take action to make sure this doesn't happen again.
You support the Senate bill? The bill going before the Senate today? Are you in support of it?
Yeah, I think anytime, do I support the Senate bill? I think the data, and I think Representative Kraft was talking about the data that supports if an interlock is on, it's much less likely, and people can't get into the car and drive. Certainly they can get other cars, but what struck me too is that he had the interlock apparently, and then a short time after it came off, he drove. And so that's why I say I think we have to look at technology to see what we can do to keep people who've been drinking out of cars. Thank you.